Hello, I'm Dylan.
And I'm Kiyan.
And this is Triple Play, that podcast where we would have preferred yellow spandex. Because this month we watched, quote-unquote, the original X-Men trilogy. So it's X-Men, X2, and X3, The Lost Stand.
Right, the first three X-Men movies, written by David Hayter, Michael Dougherty, I guess?
Doherty? I don't know.
Dan Harris, Simon Kinberg, and Zach Penn.
Directed by Bryan Singer and Brett Ratner. Produced by Lauren Schuler, Donna, Ralph
Winter,
and Avi Arad.
And released in 2000, 2003, and 2006. So not really a... Well, actually we can get into whether this was meant to be a trilogy later. But as we now know, it's not just a trilogy because there's like a bunch more X-Men movies. But these were the first three.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll talk about the trilogy thing at the end, so I wasn't really sure what to say there immediately off the bat, but yeah. But yeah, basically, I guess the way the current X-Men universe is laid out, there's X-Men 1, 2, and 3, and then there was X-Men Origins Wolverine, which is like a prequel about Wolverine.
Well, it's X2 and then Last Stand.
X3 is easier to say. Plus, the poster says X3. So.
Well, yeah, the poster is just Wolverine's claws, like symbolizing the three. But the official title is just Last Stand, which is like kind of dumb. But
yeah, that's why I'll call it X3 for the rest of this episode.
Pretty sure most people just call it X3.
And then so there was X-Men Origins Wolverine. Then there was X-Men First Class, which okay, we'll get into that later. I'll talk about that later. And then there was
the Wolverine,
and then there was Days of Future Past, X-Men Days of Future Past, and then now. What we're capitalizing on. If you didn't know, we capitalize on things with this podcast. There's, I think it's called Age of Apocalypse or Apocalypse, or actually X-Men Apocalypse. And then next year there's going to be the Wolverine 2. So that's the X-Men cinematic universe laid out for you, and a whole bunch of canceled other films that we can talk about later too.
So. As we usually do, we can just jump right into
how many times we've seen this, because that's how we always start.
Forgot about that. Never.
None. Easy. Although I had seen X-Men Origins Wolverine before seeing this. That movie was terrible, by the way. I thought it was kind of cool at the time, but I was like 11.
We're gonna watch it eventually for this podcast.
Maybe.
So.
Yeah, because we'll watch the Wolverine trilogy.
We're planning on watching like every trilogy in existence, so.
But yeah, that's all I had seen. But I knew about the X-Men characters.
Yeah, I obviously hadn't seen any of these three, and the only X-Men character I knew was Wolverine. Like I've mentioned before, not that into superheroes.
Yeah, I knew most of them from playing Lego Marvel. That game was great. And also just reading Wikipedia.
Was it actually great? Or were you just 11?
No, I played it like it only came out like last year.
Oh, I didn't know.
But it was great.
So yeah, that's where we stand on X-Men. So obviously we're not going to be the most knowledgeable about X-Men, just like we weren't the most knowledgeable about Spider-Man.
Yeah, but I've spent more time Wikipediaing X-Men over the years than I have Spider-Man, so... Okay. The X-Men are just more interesting to me than Spider-Man.
Nah. I guess that's a debate for either later in this episode or never, depending on whether or not we get into it. But yes.
Now we can go into how the film came about.
So I guess we can start. We're not going to really detail how X-Men were created too much, but as far as I know, it was created by Stan Lee, obviously.
Stan Lee, Jack Kirby.
In the 60s. Wasn't hugely popular, but then became an immense success with Uncanny X-Men, which is like another comic line that ran for a very long time. That was pretty popular.
Yeah, and since then it's been one of Marvel's bestsellers, I think. The X-Men in like conglomerate of comics. Well,
there's like so many X-Men that kind of
the
all
X-Men's.
The X-Men's is
gotta collect all the X-Men's and women's.
So yeah, that's where the brand kind of stood, but yeah, they wanted to make a movie.
Yeah, so Chris Claremont, who wrote some of the more well-known in the comics world, I guess, I don't really know, X-Men storylines, wanted to make a film of X-Men because he thought it was pretty easily adaptable to film.
Yeah, well, pre-2000, Not like it is today where like everyone sees the new superhero movie that comes out and like everyone talks about Deadpool, everyone talks about Avengers.
Deadpool was actually good though. In all fairness, Deadpool is actually probably the best superhero film.
I'm not making any comments on the quality of the movies. I'm just saying like they're really big. They're really big now. You can't deny that they are.
I forgot to mention that Deadpool is actually part of this universe.
Yeah. So there you go. Their superhero movies are huge now. They're like the biggest movies that come out.
Well, yeah, superhero films and Star Wars.
Yeah, okay. Well, both Marvel and Star Wars owned by Disney. Anyway, before the first one came out, before X-Men,
before Spider-Man,
before 2000, Spider-Man also I guess was kind of created to ride this hype train a bit, but before this, the superhero movies weren't a big deal. Apparently, I mean, we were like 3, so I guess we weren't.
Well, I mean, Spider-Man actually does kind of play into this, because what I found out was, I don't know the validity of this story, but apparently when Claremont went with Stan Lee to pitch this X-Men movie to James Cameron, because he wanted James Cameron to produce, he wanted James Cameron's then wife, Catherine Bigelow, to direct, the pitch didn't go very well because James Cameron wasn't interested, but then Stan Lee was like, hey, you like Spider-Man, right? And that's how James Cameron got attached to the Spider-Man project, which we mentioned in the Spider-Man episode, so check
subsequently
that out.
Disattached.
Yeah. I just thought it was interesting that this trilogy was kind of connected to that one in that way.
Yeah, so the pretty meta there. I mean, they all exist in this universe and also, I guess, kind of related outside too, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I think the movies Spider-Man and X-Men don't exist in the same universe. Comics, I have no idea.
Comics are just weird. That's why they're really hard to get into.
Yeah.
Because
that's why movies are better.
Yeah, because they're easier and newer, and there's less of them.
So that X-Men fell apart, but eventually another studio picked it up. I think it just went straight to Fox after that. Fox was like, hey, because Marvel was still trying to unload all of their properties to save themselves from bankruptcy. So Fox got X-Men. They wanted to make a movie, and they did.
Bryan Singer on for in the role of director. After a few controversies there, not controversies, but weren't there a few other potential directors for this?
A couple. They had, I know they had, what's his name, Brett Ratner, who ended up directing X3, was one of their original choices. Yeah. And I think they were eyeing someone else, but Bryan Singer, who works, I guess, closely with Fox, had just done a film for Fox, and he wanted to do a sci-fi film.
Yeah.
And they were going to give him the new Alien film, which we'll probably end up watching on this podcast at some point. Everything's tied together in the movie world. They wanted to give him the new Alien film, but I think the head Fox exec was like, hey, I think he would work better on the X-Men. So that's how he ended up getting attached to the project.
Yep. And he had a vision for X-Men.
Well, we should mention that he wasn't a big X-Men fan coming in. He hadn't really read any of the comics. I think, in contrast to Sam Raimi, who I think was a Spider-Man fan when he got attached to Spider-Man.
No, yeah. Bryan Singer, not even a comic book fan, I don't think.
Can't blame him.
Yeah, no, you can't. But he's bisexual, so I think once he got into X-Men more and started reading more, he was like, hey, this is really interesting to me because it. There's all those...
the allegory.
Yeah.
If you didn't know, there's obviously a big allegory between being an X-Man and...
being a mutant.
Being a mutant and being gay.
Have you tried not lesbian. Being a mutant? Iceman's mom from the second one.
Iceman was cool, though. I don't know why I'd say that.
He was cool.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going for. Anyway, so they started writing the film. I guess it went through a lot of rewrites, actually. The first one got more rewrites than the other two. Yeah,
Joss Whedon was actually part of this.
Yeah, well, that's actually not that surprising, because Joss Whedon actually started as a comic book writer.
Yeah, he wrote for X-Men.
You didn't know that.
I think he wrote some X-Men stories.
Yeah, he wrote the saga with the Cure that got adapted into X3.
Yeah. Speaking of that, we should also mention that I think the first X-Men movie wasn't adapted from any particular comic storyline. It's like the only X-Men movie that wasn't.
Yeah, and most of Joss Whedon's rewrites were actually totally scrapped because they thought it was too pop culture-y, which if you've seen his recent work, which would be like the Avengers, he never left comic book films. Actually, he never left the TV/movie industry after, I guess, Buffy.
Well, why would you if it's your job?
Because he was a comic book writer.
Well,
his job
okay,
was to write comic books.
Yeah, well, he got into TV after that.
Yeah, and then movies. Now he's heading up the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so if you want someone to blame for that, it's him.
I like Firefly. It was a pretty good show. Not the best, like everyone makes it out to be, but that's neither here nor there.
Maybe we'll make a Firefly podcast at some point.
Maybe.
Anyway, various other writers were attached writers whose names I didn't recognize, but I'm sure someone who's a big comic book or big, super obscure movie writer fan would maybe recognize.
Maybe.
But yeah, went through a lot of rewrites. Fox set the budget at $75 million, I think.
Something like that.
Which
something considerably lower than what normal summer movies are expected to do well. Because, as we mentioned before, superhero movies not exactly popular back then.
Yeah.
And that also ties into the sort of vision that Bryan Singer had for this movie. You know, he didn't want it to be like Sam Raimi, I guess, overly comic book. You know,
yeah.
Instead of the yellow spandex, you know, they have the uniform black costumes that don't look too silly. They don't look too serious either, but
well, because there's still an element of it being kind of silly in the film. They weren't totally trying to be serious with it.
Right. Well, one of the things that I think Fox liked about Bryan Singer was he didn't want to go completely campy with the movie. He wanted to do something kind of serious, whereas previous people they might have, or previous, not people they pitched X-Men to, but
other directors that they courted for the project.
Yeah, might have wanted to do something more comic book-y, and this wasn't necessarily. This actually had a lot of discrepancies with the comic book. Like, apparently there was fan outrage that what's her name, Rogue didn't have the hair stripe. She gets it at the end, but yeah.
Well, I mean, there was an outcry about the yellow spandex, and I think everybody, even people from Marvel who had to approve things that they made, like changes they made to the film, obviously, because they want to avoid tainting the brand, were like, yeah, you know, the yellow spandex wouldn't really work on screen. Although Deadpool brings that into question because it worked pretty well there.
Deadpool's not yellow.
No, but he gets someone from the X-Men in the film to join him. I mean, I don't want to spoil it too much, but there is someone who wears the classic X-Men yellow spandex in that film. But yeah, they had to cut a bunch from the script to get it under budget.
Yeah, a lot of it made it into the next two, or the next one.
Beast, Nightcrawler, Pyro, and the Danger Room all were supposed to be in the first film, and they all got nixed.
Pyro was in for like 5 seconds.
Yeah, well, that doesn't really count. They didn't even name him. They probably only named him in maybe the credits.
Maybe. It was probably like some little nod to people who really like the comics. Like, oh my god, it's Pyro! It's Pyro! And then they're like, oh, he's gone.
It's like how there was a deleted scene from X2 that had, some random mutant named Jubilee or something who has really no notable powers except maybe being able to make bright flashing lights.
That would come in useful.
Yeah, but compared to Magneto, who can bend metal.
Okay, well, we mentioned while watching this that some powers are hilariously overpowered and some are hilariously underpowered.
We'll probably get into that a bit later, too.
But isn't Jubilee, like, pretty prominent in the X-Men comics?
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that her power is anything good.
It doesn't, but I'm just saying.
So I guess casting.
Hugh Jackman obviously is the big one because his main role.
This was his
Wolverine.
breakthrough performance.
Yeah. Pretty, not really a well-known actor before getting cast as Wolverine. And
and he wasn't even the first choice.
No, the first choice was Russell Crowe.
Yeah, Russell Crowe recommended Hugh Jackman, but they didn't go straight to Hugh Jackman. They went to Dougray Scott. But he actually got as far as signing a contract, but he pulled out because he was filming Mission Impossible 3 at the time, so he couldn't make both work, so he pulled out of X-Men because he thought that Mission Impossible would be a bigger film.
Guess he regrets that now. Just like
I don't know.
Will Smith regrets...
They made 5 Mission Impossible films so far.
But it's not as big as X-Men, come on. No way.
I mean, X-Men's only big because of the comic bubble. Like, if the comic bubble didn't exist, I'm pretty sure Mission Impossible would be bigger.
It started blowing the comic bubble.
It created the comic bubble. And will probably end it at some point.
I don't know. Shrug.
I guess everyone else was just their first pick. I don't think... Except I think Magneto, they had someone else in mind, but then someone recommended Ian McKellen, and Bryan Singer was like, he would be great. It actually works out really well because Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen are actually really good friends in real life.
Yeah, so obviously Patrick Stewart was like a big fan favorite to play Xavier for years. You know, people were saying like, oh, if they made an X-Men movie, Patrick Stewart should play Xavier.
And he did.
He did. So really no controversy about that at all. So yeah, a lot of big names though in this. Hugh Jackman obviously big because of this, and then Patrick Stewart, of course, is like
Halle Berry.
Halle Berry as Storm
was pretty good. Famke Janssen as Jean Grey.
She's not as big, but she was in James Bond.
Yeah, she was. Yeah, as was Halle Berry actually. Surprisingly. Although, except person who played Jean Grey played the villain, and Halle Berry played a good guy. So, those are kind of the big ones. James Marsden as Scott Summers.
Scummers.
I said Scummers.
Hey, Cyclops was the most disappointing character in the trilogy.
Apparently, he played John F. Kennedy in The Butler.
Cool.
Oh, he was in Enchanted. I remember that film. That film was okay. It was like a Disney film where it started as like an animated film.
I know what Enchanted is.
Well, I'm just describing it for the audience. I'm sure you know what it is. Anyway,
they know what it is.
Okay, fine. Won't explain what it is then.
You can find it in our show notes that we're doing now, which
we've always done show notes for this show. They just haven't been timestamped. I don't know if people knew that.
Well, we actually
have always done show notes for this. We just never timestamped them.
Well, yeah, Cyclops was the most... He was wasted potential. He could have been because I like his power. It's such a cool power, but it's on such a
but I thought everyone else had a cooler power than
or,
Cyclops.
Cyclops could be a main character in a story.
I guess, but his power is not versatile. Is the thing. It's like Wolverine. His power is pretty generic. Like, oh, he has claws, but like he can do a lot with those claws. Cyclops is like he shoots laser beams out of his eyes. Okay.
Yeah, you're right about that, but I still thought it was a very cool power. But on a not very cool or / not very like fleshed
Coolest
out
is
well
still
enough
Magneto.
Character
Can bend metal.
Anyway,
actually,
yes.
he controls magnetic fields. I think is the exact description of his power, which actually has certain other implications beyond metal.
Beyond metal.
It's the music genre that's even more metal than metal.
Post metal.
Excuse me. Yeah, I mean, casting went pretty smoothly. You know, this film, unlike Spider-Man, but unlike things like The Matrix and Star Wars, didn't really have a lot going on behind the scenes when it was getting made, because it kind of all came together really well.
Yeah, a few little anecdotes here and there, but overall it was just, they wanted to make it, and they made it. Oh, we didn't mention that the guy who plays Toad plays Darth Maul in Star Wars Episode 1, obviously.
Yeah, Toad was the most underused character, let's be honest.
But he had the most crappy power. His power was just Toad abilities.
At least he's aptly named.
They're pretty much all aptly named. I mean, Storm, her power is to create storms. Wolverine, his powers... Well, actually, not really, because, I mean, Wolverines can't regenerate, I think. Be pretty cool if they could, but and they'd like dominate the food chain if they could. But
Rogue's was pretty
okay. Rogue is just weird. Phoenix, pretty aptly named.
Yeah, but that's only Jean Grey only takes the name Phoenix when she has the Phoenix powers.
Yeah, and she's pretty aptly named when she gets those Phoenix powers.
I mean, yeah, but until then she's just Jean Grey, telepath.
Cyclops.
Doesn't have one eye.
Has one eye thing covering his eyes.
That doesn't... What? No!
Yes.
No! Mystique. That one. Okay, that one kind of works, I guess. Juggernaut.
Pretty aptly named.
Iceman.
Yeah, that one's really aptly named.
Pyro. Okay.
Most superheroes are aptly named, so I don't know why we're getting into this.
Yeah,
very
except
much.
Italian Spider-Man.
No, he's Italian and he looks like Spider-Man, kind of.
No,
he has the he really doesn't, but he could if he lost a little weight and got a different costume.
That's like his entire appearance. Maybe while he's at it, he should cut his hair.
Well, he doesn't need to because he has the whole full mask, so.
Not Italian Spider-Man. He just wears eye masks.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying like he wouldn't need to cut his hair because. Well, anyway, like other things we've mentioned so far, that's neither here nor there.
It's just your new phrase.
Yes.
Like whoop-de-wop. Whoop-de-wop them. The most notable special effects thing for the first film was Wolverine's claws. Bryan Singer wanted to do a lot of practical effects because the budget of $75 million didn't leave him a lot of space to do a lot of visual effects.
They have a lot of visual effects in the sequels.
Yeah, because they like triple the budget when they get to the second film.
They're like, oh crap, it's a success. Give them $10 million. No,
10D.
10 to the. Never mind. Just say what you're gonna say.
I was just
gonna say 20, and then I said 10 instead. So that's where I was going with that.
Okay, I get it. Yeah. Because so for the scenes where Wolverine's claws extended, they actually built like a pneumatic model of Hugh Jackman's arm that had claws that popped out, and there was a lot of trouble with trying to design the claws, I guess, because Wolverine had been drawn by so many artists over the years. They didn't know what kind of claw look Bryan Singer wanted to go for. So originally they just made like straight knives. And Bryan Singer was like, can you curve them a bit? And they weren't really sure if they're going to be able to curve it because they weren't sure if it was going to come out of the hand straight because of the way they constructed the mechanism. They ended up kind of cutting the edge of the claw and then they curved it very slightly. I think it's like a 10-foot diameter circle if it was a full circle, is the kind of curve they got. And it looks more curved than it is on screen because of the little notch at the edge.
Yeah, they do look very curved.
But they're not actually that curved. And they had to make little handheld copies for Hugh Jackman. Actually, they had to make it for like a ton of people because they had Hugh Jackman, they had like 2 photo doubles, and then they had like 3 stunt doubles. Because he was the main character and he had so many stunts in the film. I think the guy who designed the claws, I don't remember his name. Wish I did so I could credit him, but it'll be in the show notes. He made 700 sets of claws for the first film alone, and then 600 for the second and 600 for the third. That comes to 1,900 pairs of Wolverine claws, or triplets of claws.
Interesting. It's also interesting that you just mentioned that Wolverine is the main character, which is something I kind of wanted to discuss. Kind of forgot also. So, obviously, Wolverine's the main...
he's definitely in the first film.
Yeah, definitely. Well, he's in all...
It was the intent that he would be in the first film.
Well, one, he's the most well-known X-Man, so there you go.
X-Mantis.
And second of all, I guess since Bryan Singer wasn't exactly familiar with the X-Men universe, he Wolverine is also kind of a newcomer to the whole mutant society in the film, so he kind of saw an in to that universe through Wolverine, if you know what I mean.
Well, I think he stated that they also chose Wolverine as sort of the main character for the first film. It's him and Rogue who kind of share the main character for the first film.
It's pretty much him.
Because he was... not only was it an in for Bryan Singer, it was an in for the audience.
Yeah, of course.
Also, he was well known. Also, he's like a pretty interesting character because he's more of an anti-hero when he works solo than an actual superhero.
Has an interesting backstory, I guess.
One of the more interesting than the ones on the team.
They don't really go into the other characters' backstories very much.
Well, that's what I like about X-Men. I'll talk about that at the end, actually. We'll save that till we talk about all 3 films. But yeah, and the first one was scored by Michael Kamen. I only mention that because I think this might be the first trilogy so far where every film was scored by a different person.
Yeah, it is. That we've watched, of course.
So the first one was scored by Michael Kamen. Apparently, Bryan Singer wanted to get John Williams to do the score, but he was busy. And then he wanted John Ottoman, who is the regular collaborator with Bryan Singer, but he was also busy. That's why they got Michael Kamen. Who also did Ice Age 2 at the same time. Or was that John Ottoman? One of the two did Ice Age 2 at the same time as they did. I'm pretty sure it was Michael Kamen. Although it might have been John Ottoman. Check the show notes.
Yeah, so movie came out in 2000, 6 months before it was planned to come out because of scheduling conflicts with within Fox, and was obviously a huge success.
Yeah. I mean, it partially created the superhero bubble. I'd say this and Spider-Man.
The bubble we keep referencing.
Well, because there wasn't really a bubble.
It is a bubble
before the 2000s, because it was the only superhero films that existed were Batman and Superman. Batman and Superman.
Yeah.
You know, it was Batman, and there was Batman Returns, and there was Batman Forever, and there was Batman and Robin. Actually, I think I got those last two mixed up. And then there was Superman, Superman 2, Superman 3, Superman 4.
2006 Superman was the one after that, I guess.
Superman Returns.
Which was also directed by Bryan Singer. Yeah. So really DC dominated, I guess, before this, and now it's the other way around. Marvel was like the big...
Yeah, now DC's like, oh shoot, gotta catch up.
Well, that's why they're making an R-rated Killing Joke movie, I guess, but...
Well, that's not related to the... Well, DC's always done these animated movies. They're related to the animated shorts.
Yeah, no, but this isn't animated, I think.
No, The Killing Joke's an animated film.
I didn't know that.
It's got Mark Hamill as the Joker, because he plays the Joker
he's
in every
always
animated...
the Joker.
Yeah. It's an animated Killing Joke adaptation. And everyone's more excited than the live-action DC universe, because so far the DC live-action universe has pretty much been terrible from what I've been told.
Well, I'm not interested in any of it, so... what were we even talking about?
X2. Well, the bubble.
Oh, well, how it was released to great success and did better than I guess everyone thought it would. So they're like, oh, quick, make X2, make X2.
Yeah, well, they got Bryan Singer back. He was like, yeah, I'm in for X2, let's go! They didn't get any of the writers from the first film back. They ended up hiring these two unknowns, Dan Harris and Michael Dougherty.
Michael
Dougherty.
Get a better last name because we don't know how to pronounce it now.
It was their first major studio feature film. They had made indie films before, and they teamed up, and then Fox was looking for someone to write this film, and they were fans of X-Men, so they wrote this film.
Right, so from here on, the X-Men films have storylines from the comics.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the second one is. I know they adapted a brief bit of the Dark Phoenix saga for the second one, but I don't know what the main Stryker plotline was, because I'm pretty sure Mutant 143 was created for the film. I think this one's a looser adaptation than X3, because X3 is like a pretty explicit adaptation of two storylines.
Maybe that's why it was worse.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that.
So this one has Nightcrawler. Just wanted to point that out. Pretty overpowered. Who was originally planned to be in the first one, but
not as overpowered as a lot of the other mutants, like I don't know, Phoenix, Magneto, Xavier to a point.
Well, this one introduced some characters that were originally meant to be in the first one, like Nightcrawler,
and Nightcrawler and Pyro.
Yeah, Pyro is the other one, and then Beast in the third one.
Yeah, the Danger Room was also supposed to be in this one. Apparently the Danger Room's like a big thing in the comics, I guess, because everyone wanted it to be in the films, and it ends up only getting into X3.
For a bit.
For the opening.
But
it was going to be in this one, the second one, right up until the last minute, so much so that they actually already had the set constructed, and then they had to put it away because they're like, we're not going to have time to film this, and the budget's not going to allow us to film on it. The budget for this film, $110 million.
Well...
Budget for X3, $220 million.
Here, the homosexuality / gay rights subtext is a lot more prevalent than in the first one. The first one, when we were watching it, we thought that, I guess this would actually be something to go into later, but since I already brought it up, we thought the first one had more to do with, like Red Scare, McCarthyism.
The Red Scare and the Holocaust kind of interchangeably.
Yeah. And then this one obviously gets a little more prevalent.
Mm-hmm.
I just like that one. Have you tried not being a mutant?
Yeah,
Didn't work.
And then
Iceman should say like ice on, because you know how what's his face says flame on from Fantastic
what's the Human
Four?
Torch?
Yeah.
From Fantastic Four, the
Yeah.
greatest of Fox properties.
It should be like ice on.
Have you seen the Fantastic Four films?
No.
Don't. They suck.
Okay. I've not seen like any superhero films because I
Yeah.
don't like superheroes.
I've only seen the first 2 Fantastic Four films, and they sucked, by the way.
Well, the third one's a reboot, so maybe you should watch that
No,
one.
apparently it sucked even worse than the first 2. Because I'm pretty sure Fox explicitly only made that reboot to keep the rights to Fantastic Four, and I'm pretty sure it's all but been confirmed that's what they did. But that's something for if we watch those 3 as a
That's
trilogy
neither
that doesn't really make sense.
here nor
No,
there.
it's... What? No. Anyway, so the second one, as is the case with all the trilogies, kind of just built on the first one, so there wasn't as much going on behind the scenes, even less so than the first one.
Yeah, now that they have $1 billion to work with, is it $10 billion?
110 million. They did, for some reason, change the film they were filming on for the second one. Which at first I was like, okay.
Apparently there was enough to write about on that to fill 5 pages, according to you.
Yeah, I read the American Cinematographer, which is some sort of magazine, in their April 2003 issue, published a 5-page article on the cinematography of this film and spent like a page just talking about the film. Not the film, the movie. The film, the actual film.
The film they filmed on.
Yeah, and I actually went and looked it up. I'll just only touch on this briefly, but it's actually pretty interesting. Most movies are filmed in anamorphic, which actually means that because movies are in widescreen, right? So anamorphic stretches.
Not the ones we watched.
Just the first one. Just the first. No, the 2 and 3 were widescreen. It was just number 1 that was full screen for us. We borrowed these from 2 separate people, which is why they're separate formats. Anyway, anamorphic stretches the vertical component, and then because of the lens, and then when you play it back through the projector, you use an opposite lens, which condenses the vertical back down to the 2.4 to 1 ratio. Whereas if the film that they used for X2, so they filmed X1 in anamorphic, and X2 they filmed in Super 35, which just films at 2.35 to 1 aspect ratio. That's really the super watered down version of what they did. But I'll post a link in the show notes if you want to get really in depth. I thought it was pretty interesting.
Way over my head.
I just thought it was interesting that there's so many different... I never really thought that there was so many different film stocks that they could film on for films.
No, there are.
No, there's a lot. And then, there's Super 8, Super 16, Super 35. There's 65/70 millimeter IMAX. And there's
Probably
advantages
many
and
more.
disadvantages to all of them. Anyway, I guess that's something super interesting if you're really into movies, or if you're a budding director. I guess the one other thing about X2 was Stryker's base. They built that set in an abandoned Sears warehouse because it was so big.
That's funny. They actually filmed a lot of the New York scenes in Canada. And they filmed a lot of both films in Canada, specifically the snowy scenes in the second one. So I guess, I think we mentioned on Spider-Man that Toronto is usually used...
It's usually a substitute for
New York.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they did that here, but they also filmed in Vancouver.
Yeah.
For the second one, at least. And probably the first one.
Yeah, well, gotta save on that budget. Even though you've got more money now, still gotta spend, as little as
Wisely.
possible. Yeah, spend wisely.
Well, the second one was also a great
Success
monetarily. And then I don't think they had to worry about budget on the third one because it was like the most expensive.
220 million.
Yeah, it was the most expensive movie ever made for its time. It's been passed now, but
It's been way surpassed
it's
now.
still on like the top 15. It might even be in the top 10.
Maybe.
I think I remember it was seeing that it was the 9th most expensive movie ever created at this point.
Yeah, hang on.
We
Let's see if
can
we can
look
find a
it
list.
up.
Highest grossing films. Unadjusted for inflation.
Oh, it's 21 now.
Yeah, so it's 21 now, but
it was 1 at one point. 21 unadjusted for inflation. If we go down to adjusted for inflation, it is probably higher. 16.
16. Tied with The Chronicles of Narnia, Prince Caspian. On both lists, Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides is number 1. What a waste. Yeah, so obviously they're going to make a third one after the first 2. And Bryan Singer actually...
And 5 more after that.
Bryan Singer didn't want to return for this one because...
He was directing Superman.
Yeah, I think he said he had the idea for Superman Returns more fully formed in his head than he did X3, so he took Superman Returns over X3.
Yeah.
He defected to the DC side.
So they got, what's his face? Brett Ratner. Yeah, Brett Ratner.
Who was, like we said, originally courted for the first film. They also got, well, actually originally attached was Michael Vaughn, I think, and then he dropped out because of family commitments.
And then he directed another X-Men
film. Yeah, he directed
film.
First Class. He directed the next one. The next non-spin-off, because X-Men Origins Wolverine is a spin-off.
So perhaps the reason why we and most people don't enjoy the third one as much as the first and second ones.
Well, some people just outright hate the third one. Let's be clear.
Yeah, well, it was pretty hateable. I didn't hate it.
We'll get there.
It is because Brett Ratner directed it, possibly. Maybe had something to do with it.
Yeah, they decided for the third one also to adapt 2 comic book storylines.
2 specific comic book storylines. The Phoenix
The
one.
Dark Phoenix Saga, written by Chris Claremont, and Gifted, which is the one about the Cure, which is written by Joss Whedon.
Yep.
And, yeah, it was okay, I guess.
It was all right.
The writers for this film, Kinberg and Zach. There's actually a funny story about the writing of this film. Simon Kinberg, what I was going to say was Simon Kinberg wrote Fantastic Four and Elektra before this, both of which are apparently terrible superhero films, so that might be an indicator of what this film was going to be beforehand. But apparently, Fox hired Kinberg and Zach separately, because apparently Fox just did this at the time. They hired 2 separate people to write a script for the same movie, and they hired a third guy to like merge the scripts together. But then Kinberg found out, contacted Zach, and they decided just to work together on the script instead. And so they did. They thought it would be far better if they worked together than if someone Frankensteined their scripts together.
Probably. But hey, you never know.
We could go back in time
and change it.
And change history.
No, they saved that for the later X-Men movies.
Yeah. Topical.
X-Men movies. No, I keep saying X-Man.
The X-Mans is... I don't know, the third one had even less interesting production information than the first 2, because once again, they're just building on what they had from the first 2. They finally got Beast into it. They finally got the Danger Room. They cut Nightcrawler, though.
Which they explain away in the video game.
Apparently they wrote a cameo for Nightcrawler, but they thought that a cameo was kind of...
It wasn't worth doing all the prosthetics for.
You know, it also undermined the plot of X2.
Yeah. And they still had Mystique, who was apparently super difficult to get into costume. And I read that they wanted to hide... there was a lot of secrecy with the filming of these 3 movies because they didn't want stuff released to the public or leaked. So for Mystique, I read in the first one, they had her just like in a room, like when she wasn't filming, she was like in a room with like no windows sitting there.
Apparently she hated that. She couldn't talk to anyone because no one would be there with her. Yeah, it took her 7 hours to apply the makeup, I think.
I don't know.
Because it was like full body makeup. You know, she had to be naked to get this makeup on. There's a lot of prosthetics. Oh yeah, they got Juggernaut into the third one.
Yeah, Juggernaut, everyone's favorite hero, villain.
I'm fairly certain. I'm not sure on this. I'm fairly certain in the comics he becomes like a god or something. Joins some super powerful pantheon or something.
The third one also has Archangel, who's in like it's set up for that. It's kind of set up where you think Archangel's going to be like the super prominent character because he's right at the beginning. It kind of shows his backstory as a kid, and he's in like one scene, one Deus Ex Machina scene,
two scenes,
where he saves the day and then like leaves.
Yeah, he saves his dad,
and then like leaves.
Yeah, his dad wanted to give. There was a subplot. His dad wanted to give him the cure, and then he didn't want the cure. And then he saved his dad later at the battle.
And then just leaves.
Yeah.
And then there was the whole subplot with Rogue, who was like barely in it.
Rogue could have stopped. See, the thing about Rogue's powers is it just makes you curious. Like, what if she touched Jean Grey? Would she have killed Jean Grey? Would that have been a really easy way to resolve the plot of the third one? The answer is yes, it would have.
Well, she wants that cure, so... Yeah, I guess another reason why most people hate the third one is because it kills a lot of the main characters. Like
both
Xavier.
Metaphorically and physically. I mean,
guess,
metaphorically for Rogue and Magneto because it kills their powers, so they're not really the characters they were before anymore.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, all right. And also physically kills Cyclops and Xavier by having them get and Jean Grey by having them get disintegrated. Looks pretty painful.
But I liked that about X3.
That it looked painful, or that it was painful to watch?
No, what I liked about X3, which I'll get more into later, was that I liked that they killed all those characters.
Because you didn't like them?
No. Talk about it later. Let me see if there's anything else on my note sheet. Yeah. Oh, the second film was scored by John Ottoman, the usual singer collaborator. Third one is scored by John Powell, who might have also been the one doing Ice Age 2. One of them did Ice Age 2.
It was one of the first two.
Do you know when Ice Age 2 came out?
Nope.
Okay. Yeah. The third one also had a post-credit scene. It might be one of the first Marvel post-credit scenes. And it's
now they all do, I think. Or
yeah,
like most
they all
of them.
do. Well, the cinematic universe ones do. Yeah, it implies Xavier's alive. He's been put into a mind of someone in a coma.
Yeah, wasn't it like his brother? His mind was like implanted into his brother.
That's what
like
they
that.
wanted to do, was like make him his brain dead brother. Also, the final actual scene of the movie is that it's implied Magneto kept some of his powers. Both of those were actually filmed in secret. They went on lunch break, and then Ratner took like a skeleton crew. Was like, "We're gonna go film the secret thing. Let's go."
Wonder why there was so much secrecy involved with these three films.
I don't know. There's an argument to be made that if you keep it more secret, it makes the final product more interesting to watch because there's like no leaks.
No, well,
I think it worked for Broadchurch. But I'll bring up an example where it did work.
But it depends who's watching it, because like when Star Wars Episode 7 came out, I purposely didn't watch any trailers or look at any information for that.
Yeah.
So I mean, it has to do. It also depends on who's watching it, whether you go searching for stuff like that or not. Well, whether you want to keep yourself in the dark or not.
I guess it also depends on like what kind of film it is, because like for Broadchurch, it worked really well. Broadchurch was like a detective series that was made on ITV. Chris Chibnall was so secretive about it, he didn't tell the cast and crew who the murderer was, and only gave them the scripts the day of filming. Also, they had to return it every night back to the safe. But it worked for Broadchurch because it was like, it's a murder mystery. You don't want it to get out who the murderer is. But also,
that makes sense.
Chris Chibnall wanted the actor. He didn't want the actors to know who the murderer was because he didn't want the actor to like give away signs of their guilt in their acting.
Yeah, that makes sense. Here, I guess it also kind of makes sense because Jean Grey dies in the end, so maybe that's one of the things they wanted to not reveal the actors or something like that. But it's not. Doesn't make as much sense here since it's like an action movie.
Well, I guess they just wanted to build hype for the film. I guess what they were trying to go for was like, people would be like, oh, what's going on with X3, because Jean Grey died at the end of the second film, sorry. And everyone's wondering how she's going to come back, and everyone's wondering what she's going to do. So like basically a lot of the main plot points of the film come about because of Jean Grey coming back to life.
Being insane.
Things like Xavier dying, Cyclops dying, Magneto losing his powers at the end is kind of a consequence of Jean Grey having to have some reason to go insane. So I guess they wanted to keep all those plot points under wrap because they didn't really want to get out that like Jean Grey was going insane.
Coming back as Phoenix.
I guess also they didn't want to televise the fact that they were like adapting the Dark Phoenix saga, because I think that's one of the most well-received X-Men stories. And I think the writer...
they turned it into.
Yeah, I think the writer was like really upset when in the comics they brought Jean Grey back through some convoluted plot, as they do in comics. And he was like, really, guys? You had one of the most well-received comic storylines in history, and then you decided to bring back Jean Grey. But
there you go. But
X3.
It's a great way to end it. Yes.
I guess now we can talk about the trilogies and what we thought of them and how they work, how the trilogy worked.
Right, which we kind of have been already, but yeah.
I don't know. Do you want to start?
Well, most people like the second one the best, but I like the first one the best.
Most people like the second one the best? I thought most people liked the first.
I don't know. I've heard the second one was
the second one better.
Yeah, no, I've heard like most people. Well, I've heard the second one was like really well received. I like the first one the best though.
Well, I guess we'll get into that a bit.
Even if the conflict in the second one was a lot bigger than the conflict in the first one, but like after one conflict, it's kind of like, okay, now it's into this other. The next conflict, to me at least, seems less important. Whether it is or not, it just seems that way to me. In most things.
Well, I mean, I thought the second one was better because it played up a lot more the relationship between Xavier and Magneto, which was one of my favorite things about these films. Not to say that I love these films, but I liked the Xavier Magneto interactions because it was really cool to see these two different people who have the same end goal but differing ideologies.
Yeah, and one of the things Bryan Singer wanted to do was have them play sort of a Martin Luther King / Malcolm X role.
I mean, that's what they were designed to do in the comics. That's like explicitly what they were modeled after. And that's actually something I wanted to talk about too, is why the third one might have been less successful, was because I feel like Brett Ratner didn't really understand that dynamic, because it felt like in the third one Magneto and Xavier just felt, well, Magneto specifically felt a little bit off.
Well, and there's the fact that Xavier dies like midway through.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah, I had something cool I wanted to say, but can't think of it now.
I don't know. It's all up to you, but I think most people universally agree that the third one was the worst. And
yeah, I agree with that too.
It was the worst, but I don't think it was as bad of a film that everyone's made it out to be.
Oh, I remember what I wanted to say. The second one, I will give it that it's a lot less... Well, the first one is really simple when you think about it. I mean, if you think about the major plot points, it's just simple, linear. The second one had a lot more going on, and I usually like the more complex stories, but I guess in this case, I enjoyed the first one more.
Fair.
For whatever reason.
I mean, that's fair. But anyway, yeah. I think most people agree that the third... Well, most people agree the third one's the worst. Personally, I don't think the third one was as bad of a film that I've had it made out to be.
It had its good points. It had its terrible points, too, but it had its good points.
Yeah. I mean, I think we were talking about this while we were watching it. I think most people disliked the third one because it killed off all of their favorite characters.
Overall, I really just wish they did more with Cyclops, because like I said, I really like his power. So either... I mean, I don't really necessarily like his character, or the character that his power is on, but they could have done more.
They could have done more with Xavier and Magneto, but I guess that's just limitations of an ensemble film. I actually think the third one, my main complaint about it being the worst was that it also felt kind of rushed. I think, actually, I don't say this often, I think the third one probably could have done with maybe another 20 minutes of film. And the third one was actually not that long.
Well, there were all those weird subplots that seemed to just get resolved in crappy ways in the last 10 minutes.
Yeah, and I feel like with an extra maybe 20 minutes, the third one could have been a lot better of a film. Like, the connection between the Cure plotline and the Jean Grey plotline was tenuous at best. And I think with some extra establishing scenes, it could have been really good. What those scenes would be, I'm not a filmmaker, so I wouldn't know, but...
Maybe.
But
maybe... I guess we'll just have to go back in time if we want to see that outcome.
I don't know. The third one had potential. I also did want to talk about... I actually like X-Men in general better than Spider-Man because I just...
Nah.
I liked I liked the first film for not having to go into the origin of all these characters, because to be honest, I'm just sick and tired of origin stories at this point, because I actually watch comic book movies, because I just watch every movie, because I love movies.
You watch every movie.
Every movie that I'm interested in, which includes comic book movies. Gotta see what the hype is about, right?
No. You can, but you don't have to.
Anyway, I'm just sick and tired of origin stories, and I'm glad that X-Men is just like, there's a blanket origin story for all of them. They had a mutation, and now they went to Xavier's boarding school, and now they're an X-Men.
Well, there's Wolverine, and they did touch on his origins in the second one, but I think they did that well, because it wasn't like a huge long flashback with Wolverine's.
It wasn't like X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Well, I do like Spider-Man more, just because I think he's a more interesting character.
Well, I think there's more potential for interesting relationships and plot points with the X-Men, because anybody could be a mutant. And
it turns out everyone's a freaking mutant, because there's like 200 million X-Men in the comics.
I don't know, I just think it's interesting. There was something else that I know we wanted to say. Oh, we were going to talk about the other X-Men films briefly before we wrapped up. Yeah, so what happens now is they make a prequel, which is First Class, because they're going to show, quote unquote, the first class of Xavier's school.
Mm-hmm. We mentioned while watching this that we only had seen Storm teaching, but there's actually deleted scenes with Cyclops teaching.
Oh, okay.
Interestingly enough, just a little tidbit there.
I think we knew Cyclops was supposed to be a teacher, because Wolverine filled in for Cyclops in the Danger Room scene.
Yeah, but we didn't actually see him.
Oh, yeah, they put Colossus in the movies, too. We forgot to mention that.
Oh, yeah!
The Metal Man!
It's a testament to how
little he does
that we completely forgot he was in the movie.
Well, Colossus and Deadpool was better anyway. Yeah, so they show the First Class, because I guess they didn't know where to go after X3. I think Bryan Singer even said, like thematically, plot-wise, it all wraps up as a nice trilogy, and that's kind of what we wanted in the third film, was to at least wrap up the trilogy so that... And it does.
I guess.
It works as a trilogy.
So First Class doesn't have Wolverine, then?
Not as far as I know.
So I guess that's why they made Origins Wolverine.
Well, they made Origins Wolverine, and then they were going to do like an Origins Magneto.
That would have been cool.
Yeah, they scrapped that because they made First Class, which I guess incorporated a lot of plot elements from that film, because they credited the original writer of the Origins Magneto script as one of the co-writers of First Class because of his story ideas for that movie. And then they made Days of Future Past, which does some timeline BS to reboot the timeline so they can use the young actors and don't have to go back and get all the old ones from X3. And also so Jean Grey and Xavier and all of the dead people are alive. And then now there's Apocalypse, which to be honest, I don't know.
I'm guessing it has something to do with apocalypticness.
Yeah, it has something to do with the first mutant who was named Apocalypse, who has the power of immortality.
Yeah, no, I've seen the trailer for it. Didn't understand anything that they were saying. I'd watched the trailer before I'd seen any X-Men things, but yeah, there you go.
Oscar Isaac plays Apocalypse. Poe Dameron, Force Awakens.
Oh.
Anyway, yeah. It works as a trilogy, is what I'm saying. I think it wraps up everything. Thematically, it works mostly. They kind of lost the MLK, Malcolm X vibe between Xavier and Magneto in the third film, but other than that, I think it actually does work as a trilogy. It tells a complete story from beginning to end.
Guess so. The quality of that story is to be determined.
Well, I mean, these films were fun. Like we said with Spider-Man, like we said while we were watching these were fun films.
The first one was.
The second one was fun-ish, but it got kind of dark when Xavier was about to kill everyone. The third one was just, okay, wow. Expanded universe.
Yeah, well, like Spider-Man, there's a lot.
We should just read a list of mutants for this.
Can we pull up a list of mutants? Would that be a good idea? Probably not, but we're doing it anyway.
Just search list of mutants. Marvel
database wiki.
It's actually not that many on this page.
I'm guessing there's more, but I'm thinking...
Earth 616 is the main universe, so...
Oh god, whatever that means.
Yeah, Marvel Comics have different universes. Actually, the cinematic universe is one of those universes.
Yeah.
Great. Hey, look, Beast.
So yeah, there's a
Bling!
lot. Bling.
Colossus. Cable. I don't know what powers he has.
I don't know what powers any of these people have.
Franklin Richards, the son of the leader of Fantastic Four. He's apparently one of the most powerful telepaths in the universe. Magneto. Match. How much you want to bet he makes fire?
They already have Pyro.
No, girl. No, Pyro doesn't make fire. He only controls it.
He should team up with Match. I'm guessing that happens at some point.
No, girl. Look, he's just a brain in a sphere.
Brain in a vat?
Rogue.
Maybe she just thinks she's a mutant.
Wait,
she's actually just a brain in a vat.
Oh, Kitty
Star-Lord.
Pryde. Kitty Pryde takes on the name Star-Lord, apparently. Toad!
Isn't Star-Lord from, what's it called?
Guardians of the Galaxy?
Yeah.
That was actually a pretty good film. Less of a superhero film.
Yeah, I know. I watched that.
Yeah,
It was all right.
I liked it.
We'll discuss that when the second one comes out a year from now, and the third one inevitably comes out after that.
I was just looking at the powers of Toad. I can't seem to find them, so... Oh, powers.
Toad powers.
Toad powers, yeah. Okay.
Oh, it looks like there's a little power grid. I guess they have a ranking system for their powers.
Oh, yeah. The Marvel Wiki has a ranking system for... Great. That's just great.
Anyway, yes.
Devil Dinosaur!
He's the best one, Devil Dinosaur.
He's a dinosaur!
And also a devil.
He's actually a dinosaur.
Yeah, hands down the best one. They should make a Devil Dinosaur movie. I want a non-human main character. Well, I mean, they're all non-humans because they're mutants, but I want a mutant dinosaur main character.
You want a non-human mutant.
Non-humanoid.
Non-human.
Non-humanoid mutant.
It's also not human.
Yes. It's a non-human, non-humanoid mutant.
Yes.
So yeah, obviously there's the comics, all the movies they've made since.
There's like 10 of them now.
Yeah.
9. I don't know.
There's
10.
9.
No,
First 3.
6. There's 9.
Yeah.
There's the 3,
and the 3
2
Wolverine
ones, and the Deadpool. So 9.
Okay, well I thought we weren't going to count Deadpool and we're going to count Wolverine too.
Well, Deadpool is in the universe. I'm just saying in the universe.
Yeah, but it's usually listed as like a standalone. Like on Wikipedia, it's listed as a standalone.
It's part of the no. Wikipedia lists it as part of the universe.
But if you look on the little navigation box there, it's like standalone Marvel movies. Deadpool.
No, if you go to the X-Men movies page, it lists Deadpool as one of the X-Men movies.
Yeah, but if you go to the Marvel, if you go to the Marvel cinematic universe,
because Deadpool's not part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's part of the X-Men universe. Because these are made by Fox. The Marvel Cinematic Universe are made by Marvel. Because Fox owns the right.
So who made Deadpool?
Fox.
All right. Whatever. It's too confusing. See, this is why I don't like superheroes. It's just all too confusing.
No, this is confusing because of the rights. This is confusing because Fox owns the rights to X-Men, Sony owns the rights to Spider-Man, and Marvel owns everyone else that they created.
Yeah, see, it's too confusing in universe and in the real world.
It's just confusing out of the world because Marvel is going bankrupt and they decided to bank on selling off their licenses.
Yeah, I think we're out of things to say.
Well, I was about to go into the exit anyway, so email us at thedoctor@decorativevegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your mutant powers. What would your mutant powers be? You're not allowed to choose one that's already been taken by an actual mutant, which means you're not allowed to take magnetism like Magneto.
So what are our mutant powers then?
I don't know.
Podcasting?
We have mutant. we have a superhuman ability to make podcasts on tight deadlines.
At the last minute by our own choosing.
Hey, sometimes it's out of our control.
Procrastination should be considered a superpower.
We're not actually procrastinating on this. We're recording this like a month in advance, so...
Who knows when it'll get edited.
That's true. I might pull a Matrix and edit it the week of. But we did actually get an email for Triple Play. I think this is the first email we've ever actually gotten about Triple Play and not Trust Your Doctor, so that's interesting.
So congrats.
I guess you win a prize of nothing.
You get the glory of being the first And hopefully not last.
Okay. It says, hello. I heard on the most recent Triple Play episode, that would be episode 5.5, that Dylan hasn't finished Holy Grail or seen Life of Brian. Correct on both counts. Are you guys ever going to do an episode on those and the meaning of life? They're kind of a trilogy. All have the same cost, and God is in all three. Haha, love hearing you guys talk about things. Cheers, Steven. Shindo. SS.
Yeah, probably.
Eventually.
To answer your question.
Eventually.
Not within the next year, because we planned out the next year of Triple Play.
Yeah, we like to capitalize on movies coming out, and nothing coming out in the next year has anything to do with Monty Python, so...
Nor will anything ever. Probably. Most likely.
You never know.
They might. The only thing I could think of that might have anything to do with it is if they remake Holy Grail with, like, a different cast, which would kind of be worse.
Terrible.
Yeah. But you never know, it could be fun.
Hollywood likes to remake things.
Yeah, they do.
Check us out on YouTube at Triple Play. Check us out on iTunes, Triple Play. Be sure to tell your friends about the show. We're coming to the end of year 1 of Triple Play. But only one episode left for the first year of Triple Play, and then we go into year 2.
Yep. Also check us on Facebook, facebook.com/3ppodcast, and like us on Facebook, and also check us out on Twitter at 3ppodcast, and follow us on Twitter. And next time, we forget who we are. But until then, the end.